In this video, we want to shed some light on a fascinating topic which has been overlooked, but a very important aspect of European history, and their widespread eating of dead Africans in what is termed politely medicinal cannibalism during their early encounter with African civilizations, especially in the north part of Africa. It is reminiscent of the statement that was uttered by Jesus in John 6:53, where he said, "Verily, verily, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life." It reminds us of this and the psychology of that statement. There are many sources on this issue. Works such as Obler's Medicinal Cannibalism in Early Modern English Literature and Culture, and Sagg's Mummies, Cannibals and Vampires, The History of Corpse Medicine from the Renaissance to the Victorians. This shed light on this fascinating yet often overlooked aspect of European history, the widespread practice of medicinal cannibalism during their early period when they encountered male-dominant humans. This practice was not limited to any particular social stratum in Europe. It was embraced by royalty, priests, and scientists alike. And during slavery, it was very clear that they engaged in some form of cannibalism. We want to consider this issue because of psychological factors, European fascination with ancient hermit, and the consumption of mummies. Obviously, today they are now saying that ancient hermit is European, the perspective which comes from their psychological issues. Dead Africans were eaten by Europeans. References to acts of cannibalism in Europe are sprinkled throughout many religious and historical documents, such as reports of cooked human flesh being sold in the 11th century English markets during times of famine. And there's a lot of engraving of Spaniards cutting down the bodies of thieves hanged by Pedro de Mendoza in order to eat them. And also the slave trade, the African slave trade and cannibalism, a true story where the psychological factors of superstition and cannibalism became prominent during the slave trade and crossing the Atlantic. And then the book The Iceman Inheritance by Michael Bradley explores a lot of factors that shows European aggression in Western civilization through the lens of their prehistoric trauma that occurred in them when they lived in the caves in Caucasus Mountains. This led them to realize that they had a very sordid new history of violence, a history that is not worthy to be called history. The same was said by our ancestor Xenophis when he told Solon and say, "Oh Solon, which is Soronya. Soronya means empty head. Lands are never anything but children, and there is not an old man amongst you." And Solon asked, "Why? What do you mean?" And he replied, Xenophis the priest said, that in mind the Greeks, Europeans are all young. There is no old opinion handed down among you by ancient tradition, nor any signs which is hoary with age. Hoary means white with age. And he was told the reason why. So because of that, then the Greeks or the Europeans then engaged in identity appropriation and cultural appropriation or cultural theft, specifically hermit. That's where they stop. So when you understand these psychological factors, or specifically where Europe's identity is a crisis, even up to now as we speak, and also the understanding that Europeans have a very short history, you then can understand their fascination with ancient hermit, a term known today as Egyptomania, all over, to the point where they actually want to claim that ancient Egypt is in Europe. Their history, sadly, also contains the lingering spirit of cannibalism. That spirit of cannibalism would boost their appetite to find a solution, to feel satiated by their lack of history and their lack of ancestral achievement. So they go on to steal other people's legacies, other people's identity, other people's culture, other people's religion, other people's history. Therefore, when they do that, they find appropriate reasons. They might not have gone on to find these reasons to ingest and eat African corpses, despite the fact that they knew that they are colonizing and taking these people who were melanin dominant, just like what Christian Devon said in 1787 after seeing the Sphinx in ancient Kemet. Just think that this race of black men, today our slave and object of our scorn, is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of speech. And when he said this, it is clear therefore that when they started to eat African corpses, they had confidence that they may also be able to replicate the original invention and original spirit and the power that ancient Africans had. This is very clear. So dead Africans were eaten by Europeans because they consumed mummies. Europeans believed that these mummies contained mystical powers, which they call mummy power. At the same time, in the 17th century, they pulverized these mummies, ate them, put them in drinks, made paint out of them. All their activities were reminiscent of witchcraft. Just like in witchcraft, particularly those that are influenced by magic or occult practices, they may be people that believe that spiritual significance comes from the corpses, or associating themselves with the corpses in a certain manner and in a certain way. But Europeans went on to potentially cook, eat, snort, drink these corpses when they grind them in powder, and they thought that by doing that they are accessing mystical energy of ancient power that ancient Africans had. So the consumption of mummies became a prominent subject and a prominent activity. But it was also subsidized by our own activities as melanin dominant human beings when we were given money and trinkets, just like those other kings, chiefs who sold their own people into slavery. It's same thing with going and robbing graves and digging up corpses and selling them to Europeans who would go on unrolling ceremonies and festivities. Very, very clear. In the 1800s, you could buy a mummy from street vendors in Egypt and Victorian era parties that were the highlight of the social season were called a mummy unwrapping party. So that's why they said Tutunga was one of the Europeans and so forth and so forth. Now, it is very clear that we need to know the term mummy. It comes from mumia, an Arabic word that refers to piece hold, a natural substance that is said to have been used in Islamic medicine for generations. During the Crusades, Europeans were introduced to mumia, piece hold, as a medicine, and soon it was being shipped all over Europe and used as a kind of cure-all. But Egyptomania, the friends Europeans had, caused them to continue to eat the mummies because of their melanin dominance or carbon dominance or asphalt dominance. Did you know that mummified remains of many black indigenous Africans were eaten by Europeans because they believed it could give them both healing as well as enhanced powers? This is M.R. Himotep. This book, Mummies, Cannibals, and Vampires by the Richard Stark, is a very, very, very important book. It details in vivid descriptions the largely forgotten history of European corpse medicine or corpse eating. We saw their kings, their ladies, their gentlemen, their priests, and the scientists and common men stealing and swallowing or wearing human blood or getting human blood or flesh and bone and fat and brains and skin in an attempt to heal themselves of various diseases, and also in a clear attempt to absorb the power that they thought and assumed that these corpses or ancient Africans had. Very, very clear. So why aren't there more mummies found today? They are found here and there, but Europeans were being crazy for mummies and their obsession for mummies, whether they took these and ground them as medicine, ate them in cannibalistic style or witchcraft style, or participated in unwrapping parties or so-called scientific studies. It is the cause why there are no mummies today. There is also the version of the Arabs or the Arabic or the Islamic or the Quranic or the Muslims. One of their leading lights, Ibn Sina, who is also thought to be a significant physician, astronomer, thinker, and a writer for the Islamic Golden Age, is the one who actually introduced cannibalism. Is one of those who introduced cannibalism into Europe. Because remember, Europe was backward. Before the Industrial Revolution, Europe was totally a dark continent. So cannibalism in the form of ingesting mummies was recommended by Avicenna 980 to 1037 as a subtle but resolute remedy that could be used as an antidote to poison and could cure epilepsy or nausea and other popular cold symptoms. By the late 16th century, about 600 years later, the ingestion of mummies became renowned as pharmaceutical solution. Pharmacy means from the witches. That's what it means, pharmakia, witches or poison. And they were still sold in many places, including Germany, France, Poland, everywhere. These African mummies. That is what they wanted. They didn't want any other type of mummy. Now, Europeans who ate these mummies were trying to cure physical ailments, but underlying that, it was cultural appropriation. And today, they are hypocritical about this, and they are hiding this factor. And they are not coming out clearly that they were purposely engaged in barbaric cannibalism, or you can call it spiritual cannibalism, or whatever term you want. They then apportioned cannibalism to places they conquered. And it's certain possibly that Europeans were consuming more human flesh at the time than people in the New World, said Sachs in his book. Many important discoveries about Kemet occurred during this time, and wealth Egyptologists or amateur Egyptologists and other collectors did much damage. They raided tombs and the mummies and sold them cheaply to European enthusiasts for a variety of purposes. They got trinkets and a little gift here and there. The mummies served as collector's piece, providing a little historical information. Even though they saw that this is a male and dominant human being, they ignored all that and they wanted to eat that. However, many mummies were never served. They met a very fateful fate. Some were boiled, and the oil produced was used as perfume, was used as ointment, it was used as medicine. You wonder why we have such kind of idea today of medicine. And then comes this subject of Egyptology, which is merely a program by pale Arabs funded by Europeans to continue to dig up our ancestors and continue to pretend to be studying them. They cannot dig in Europe, they cannot dig in Arabia, they cannot dig anywhere. Why? Because there is no worthy history in Europe other than melanin dominant history of Europe. Everywhere in the world where you dig, you find a melanin dominant human being, Bantu, African, black people. It's only in Africa where you find something mystical. Yet our governments, millions of our melanin dominant human beings, worship pale Arabs and they look to Jesus. And the witchcraft continues in daylight with aplomb and with our applause. And some of us, they don't even know. So this macabre fascination and sensationalism continues. This is why they continue to dig up our ancestors. There is power that they are looking for. So the macabre fascination and sensationalism comes from the conception of mummies, which was driven by a fascination with a macabre and desire for mystical experiences, for spirituality. This is the reason why they do that, because they are hoping to replicate the spirituality and intelligence of ancient Africans, of ancient Kemet. Just like all Christians, all Muslims who go to Mecca, all Jews who participate in the Passover, they want that spirituality. They are looking for that and hoping to be Christ-like. And so they engage like Christians in the Last Supper ritual, where they eat a physical body and drink physical blood, which is represented by a piece of bread and wine, red wine, but through transubstantiation it becomes real, through a witchcraft energy, or through witchcraft energy that you transpose on it by belief and by faith. This is a very, very important understanding when you look at it. So Europeans thought they could be possessed by the mysterious and revered gods or spirit of the gods of ancient Africa. Then they secretly desired that they are part of ancient Kemet, and they are not. Unfortunately, as they lack some understanding of the cultural and ethical implications of being a proper, true, melanin dominant human being. They cannot have the actual spirit of those ancestors, but they can have a pretender spirit, shatter spirit, or apophysis spirit, and then they are led to the behavior which we see them doing of discrediting graves and taking our ancestors and putting them in glass coffins, whereas they are supposed to be the earth, and they go along knocking off the noses and lying that they are the original ones. Yet we know they are not. They cannot be ancient Egyptians. They have no totems. They have no melanin. They are white. They are pale. So this is a very important subject. Subscribe to our channel, our YouTube channel, Kamiti Buru Ethics. You can send us an email on join@marifado.com. Till we meet again, this is the truth. We are the original people with the original energy. And some people that go into mystical studies and esoteric studies believe that if they eat you physically in a cannibalistic style, mumia, mama means my mother, they are being born again. This is why they say we tried different brands of mummy powder, so you don't have to. So they know, they've grasped it, and it is part of us, some of us that have sold out. Till we meet again, have a great day. Your manager to be Priest Rabbi LM Duzukurikani Mujaganja says, Amini.